Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, it's a pleasure to be back on the show.
John, how did the Searchlight's drill program on its Flin area properties work out?
Well, Jim, we introduced Searchlight on March 4th as it started a 3-hole drill program on the Bootleg project, and this is a gold project. It's west of Flin on the Saskatchewan side of the border, and it's had historic gold mining in that area, but it was all relatively small scale, nothing ever big, and in this case they've mined it down to about 50 meters chasing these high-grade veins. And what Searchlight wanted to do was plunk 3 holes down to get its own core and be able to assess what are the structural controls in this system, and also to assay in between, because they think that these systems here in this Flin-Flon area could lend themselves to open pit bulk tonnage mining, kind of like a Detour Lake scenario where you have a bunch of high-grade veins and you smear them out, but there's enough of them that you end up with an ore-grade mineralization on the overall body of rock that you end up removing. So they reported results this week, and the market wasn't particularly happy, but there's a structural reason for that, which I'll explain later. The 3 holes all encountered a decent grade mineralization, you know, the sort of 1 to 4 or 5 gram intervals at different depths of the holes. But the 3rd hole was very interesting. At the very end of this 200-meter hole, they had 1 meter of 31.6 gram per ton gold. That's 1 ounce gold over 1 meter, and that's about 100 meters vertical, and it's to the northwest of these northeast trending vein systems. And this was something different. They could not really see that. This was like the other intervals cutting through the veins, and yes, you're going to get the gold mineralization because the gold's dropping out in the veins. This was butting up against these volcanic rocks that are presumably full of pyrrhotite and everything, which explains why there's a big mag anomaly associated with this. But it's a separate structure to the northwest that's not documented in the past drilling, and certainly was never anything that the previous operators 60, 70 years ago would have looked at. So they are quite intrigued by this. They believe they have confirmation of the bulk tonnage scenario, but they also think there's something potentially very interesting going on, and they would like to go back in there and drill another fence of holes. They're debating on whether to tackle them from the northeast, drill them northwest, drill them southeast, rather than from what they did, drill them from the southeast northwest to cut across the apparent dip of the system. But that's to be decided later. They are Bootleg Lake is the largest land position in this immediate area to the west of Flin-Flon. There are other claims in the area. They would like to consolidate them all and build this into a big project. The BD South target on the Flin-Flon North project, that's to the north of this area, they had done a mag-EM survey and picked up a conductor that had never been tested. It was just sitting there. They did kill it with a 207-meter hole. It intersected pyrite and pyrrhotite, which explains the mag-EM anomaly. And then they did a downhole survey and picked up an off-hole conductor, which is not associated with the iron sulfide mineralization that they did hit. So they may revisit this target at a later point. This is an overburden covered area where geochemical sampling is of no use. It has seen very little work in the past. So they killed the specific target that they tested with that single hole, but that hole enabled them to see another potential target, and they're doing all these sort of alteration studies and that to see if there's reason to believe that there's something else going on in this area that justifies putting a hole into that target. Now, the structural reason the stock's gone soggy, and this, in my view, is an excellent bottom fishing window, is last year in May, before we realized that we were having a turnaround in the 10-year bear market for the resource juniors, they ended up doing this pity financing at 3 cents. The minimum's supposed to be 5 cents for financing. unless you're planning a rollback. But if you plead, I am so woe-begotten, we cannot raise any money, the stock exchange will give you permission to do a financing below 5 cents. So they did 14 million flow-through units at 3 cents with a half warrant at a nickel that expires on May 26th this year. And obviously, since this came free trading in September, October, their market, Alf Stewart's been working overtime to find new homes for all the flow-through paper that the clip and flippers have been dumping. And now that we're less than or just about a month away from the expiry of those 5-cent warrants and the stock is actually above the 5-cent exercise price, now they've been dealing with these warrant holders saying, oh, we better grab the money before this thing ends up back below a nickel. So the stock's been busy absorbing this. To me, this is a good situation because part of my audience are American subscribers, and it's very difficult for them to participate in private placements because there's a horrible thing called Rule 144, which is a special legend above and beyond the 4 months restriction that has to be removed in order for an American resident to sell private placement stock. So when there's all these clip and flippers suddenly providing a lot of liquidity at a pretty good price for a story that's got a lot of legs, this I like. It's the type of situation where new buyers can come in, take the paper off the hands of the Canadians who are the only ones who can take a flow-through tax benefit. The other issue is they did 23 million units at 2.5 cents in hard dollars. That came with a full warrant, 23 million warrants at 5 cents good for 3 years. Those people aren't in any hurry to exercise the warrants. They've probably been busy clipping the stock and flipping it, clipping the warrant and flipping the stock. So the market's been having to digest that also. But the nice thing is the price is so low. If you're a warrant holder, you can't sell those warrants. They're non-transferable. So the only way you can ever make money is by selling your long position from that warrant into the market, shorting it, and then either hoping the stock goes down so you can cover it in the market and keep your free lunch warrant alive, or if the stock keeps going, exercise it and get the money in the treasury sooner than later. So the company has this challenge to overcome. There's about 140 million shares fully diluted compared to about 80 million actually issued, and they have working capital still of $1.1 million after completing this program, so they're in pretty good shape to go back in there. And I think they've got another $300,000 or so to come from digesting those flow-through placee warrants that are still out there that expire in the next month. So the next month the stock's going nowhere in a hurry. There's no pending results for anything, and they will not go back to do any further work until the spring thaw period is over. But the other thing that company, instead of being on the phone, Stephen Wallace and Al Stewart being on the phone holding hands from all these shareholders, is they should go to work on their website and create pages for the Kulik Lake project and the Hanson Lake projects. Now, Stephen Wallace is one of these accumulators of projects who studies all these assessment works and watches these claims when they come open. He goes in there and stakes them right away when they come open. They've specialized in Saskatchewan. Hanson Lake is not that far from the Flin Flon area. It's right next to a highway. It's a pegmatite field that has all these critical metals like cesium and lithium in it, and it's not really been looked at in recent time. So this is something they need to give a special page to let people know they have it. And Kulik Lake appears to be a light rare earth system somewhere near the Larange area. Saskatchewan has Hoytus Lake way up by the Athabasca Basin. There isn't any really world-class rare earth deposit yet discovered in Saskatchewan, but there are indications that maybe if you try hard enough, Saskatchewan can become a critical metals type place. And they have another project, Doddridge Lake, which they think is similar to Janus Lake of Forum Energy Metals, a sediment-hosted system with copper, cobalt, vanadium, and silver potential. But they haven't really created places within the website to let people know that in addition to the gold potential and the base metal potential of Saskatchewan, there's also this critical metals potential that when you buy the stock, you're also getting a potential future spin-out of all this critical metal potential. So Searchlight right now is a bottom fish rated, spec value rated company in my system. I haven't made it a favorite yet, but it's certainly one I'm very interested in because they have money, they have liquidity, and they've got a story that's now got some legs in the bootleg lake area on the Saskatchewan side of the Flin area with its gold potential.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, rare earth prices have started to retreat, and so have rare earth stocks. But Namibia Critical Metals is hanging in there. Why is that?
Well, Jim, first to address the retreat in these critical metal plays that caught the market's imagination in the first quarter. That was when we had the big clean energy rollout, all the hype about how the electric vehicles were going to take off and rule the universe, and the lithium stocks went through a tremendous financing binge as all this money poured in, and anything connected with the battery sector, that did well. And people started to remember that, regardless of what battery configuration there will be in the future that runs these electric vehicles, permanent magnets made from rare earths, neodymium, praseodymium as the main rare earths, and terbium and dysprosium as the secondary ones to dope them so that they don't lose their magnetism in high operating temperature. These are not going to find any substitutes. These are core fundamental technology that's going to be part of the electric vehicle future and any other applications where you want some really powerful permanent magnets to do your work for you. And the metal prices, the rare earth prices for these metals had been rising quite substantially, but about a month ago they peaked and started to retreat. And I'm not quite sure why, but one problem we're seeing is that the chip capacity of Taiwan and all these other places that feed these car makers, and now it's affecting all kinds of industry that use chip technology. There are severe shortages, first created by the pandemic situation and the slowdowns, and then apparently a lot of the inputs for the chip making sector are produced in Texas. And when that big freeze happened and shut down everything, these chemical factories that have been slow getting back up and running, this has created a global shortage, and we're actually seeing a slowdown in car manufacturing plants being shut down. So I suspect that the rare earth prices, the demand pressure that was pushing them up has eased, and they're coming off their recent gains that they posted in the past 6 months. Now, in the case of Namibia Critical Metals, their Loftal project would provide the dysprosium and the terbium, the heavy rare earths that are not present in any meaningful quantities in light rare earth deposits, such as the Mountain Pass project of MP Materials. And JOGMEC has recognized this. Japan has its own in-house separation capacity for heavy rare earths, and it did this deal which allows it to gain a majority interest in the Loftal project down the road by pretty much funding everything through to production. So the market has never been super excited about this deal because Namibia Critical Metals ends up with a relatively small interest, and a heavy rare earth mine's not going to be worth $1 billion plus dollars, but it has been this core fundamental asset. Now, JOGMEC had spent $4 million last year, and the first term required only $3 million. They need to spend $7 million more to earn 40%. So a couple weeks ago, they said, yes, we're entering the second term, even though we're already got the $3 million extra into it. We're spending another $2 million this year on the project. So we continue to be interested. We're keeping it alive. So the core asset, which never got any upside during the boom in the last 4 or 5 months, when all the critical metals were taking off, it's still there. But what's really keeping the stock's interest going for the market is the Grootfontein project. And this is this 40-kilometer long project, which has seen relatively little exploration. It's part of this very long fault structure, which hosts the Ochikoto project of B2 Gold. It's about, I think, 80 kilometers to the southwest. It's a major crustal scale conduit. Now, the 40-kilometer portion of this project hosts the Grootfontein mafic complex. And this is an layered intrusive complex. And an interesting thing, the Namibia Geological Survey did some studies on this, and they came to the conclusion that this system has been depleted in metals like nickel, cobalt, and copper. And this is important because when the system cooks long enough and the magma chambers enable the fractionation process to happen, where the metals end up hooking up with sulfur to create sulfides, and while this thing slowly cools, the denser sulfides sink to the bottom of the chamber, end up in the feeder zones, which continue to spew hot, molten magma into the system. It's kind of a countercurrent thing. The flow of the lighter magma is upwards, while the heavier, denser metallic sulfides are sinking downwards, and that's how Voisey's Bay was formed. The nickel, copper, cobalt ovoid deposit, which sits sort of in the base and in embayments on the sides of these chambers. And they say, okay, we've got this depletion that happened here. And last week we talked about Forum Energy Metals Love Lake, where they did similar alteration depletion studies and also came to the conclusion that the Love Lake complex in northern Saskatchewan has also undergone this depletion of nickel, copper, and cobalt, which is why they are flying a big EM survey on that project starting in May to see if there are conductors associated with the magnetic anomalies that they see in this system. And Namibia Critical Metals is also going to be starting a SkyTem EM survey over the ultramafic portion of this project. The southeastern half of it is in the sediments, which do not have any of this magmatic segregation style deposit potential, but they're going to fly it over there over the mafic complex to see if there are obvious conductors in there. And because this thing's going to have pyrrhotite in it, there will be conductors also. So it's not a slam dunk thing that every conductor is going to be nickel, copper enriched massive sulfide deposit. But this is a new angle on top of what guided them last year when they took this on and started looking at the gold potential. And last year they demonstrated that yes, the gold mineralization, the fluid flow has come up through this system through the along the main northeast southwest crustal scale fault structure. There's all these splays. There's the highland area at the southern end of it. There's a parallel fault called a Waterberg fault, where they've done a IP survey over a segment. They're going to poke some holes into that this year to see what's going on there. And they've also got this jog in the structure at the northeastern end, where they've also done IP surveys and are going to take a closer look at that. So this Grootfontein play, which was sort of this, okay, you got this big mafic complex been there forever, nobody's found anything, but yet it hasn't really had a lot of work. Now it's getting a lot of the sort of detailed scientific work done by Rainer Elmies, who is now in charge of everything after Don Burton stepped back due to take care of his health and things like that. And this project, I think, is going to make waves later this year when they get around to drilling and also showing how all these targets hang together. They do not have the funding that an SK Mining has. Well, it's got like $15 million. They're doing something very similar with the SK project, the Siblulu Quarry project, now 100% owned. Again, very scientific approach done by highly skilled geological people. Namibia Critical Metals is in a similar boat, and I'd forget about the rare earth stuff for the moment. That's on a slow burn. We'll see what JOGMEC gets accomplished this year on that front. But its potential for Grootfontein to yield both magmatic segregation style targets within the Mayfic complex and finally show where the gold mineralization is showing up in displays off the main structure. That's what this discovery story is going to be about this year.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, did New Legacy ever get its Rift anticline drill program underway?
Jim, indeed they did. A couple of weeks ago, they announced that two core rigs were now on site, starting to drill the core portion. They had to pre-drill these, with RC rigs, these pre-collar holes through the volcanics. There's this sort of barren cap, 300 meter plus cap sitting on top of the older horizons that would host the Carlin type mineralization. They've got 6 of those done. Now they've got 2 rigs drilling away. They've got a 3rd rig heading for the site. They hope to drill about 12 holes as part of this program. These holes take a very long time to drill. You have to be careful that you don't lose them. If you ever hit structural complexity, which is always a good thing for mineralization, there's also the risk of losing the hole. The first hole they're going to drill about 160 meters sort of east and north, which I guess is northeast of hole 4, which hit gold mineralization, not in the Wenban 5, which is the big story here, but lower down, deeper in the Roberts Mountain Formation, which was a bit of a surprise. And they're still pretty confident that these low-angle faults that come from the west and rise towards the east that fed the area of the Serena zone as kind of like the last stage of feeding out into that area, but that this rift anticline, this is the structural trap. This has the thick Wenban 5, which is the preferred host for soaking up Carlin-type mineralization in this part of Nevada. They're still pretty confident that these low-angle faults are the main gateway, but the existence of the Roberts Mountain Formation beneath these low-angle faults, that's thrown a bit of a wrench into the whole model, so they're drilling these holes deeper to make sure that they assess what's also going on down below. So you can expect 6 to 8 weeks per sort of 1,200 meter hole to be done, and then you can expect another 6 to 8 weeks for assays. So given that they just started now, it probably will be end of May, mid-June before they finish the first holes. And it could be like late August before they get the first assays to see what's in this core. Now, they do have their XRF unit where they'll be reading the arsenic and antimony, the Pathfinder elements for Carlin systems, so we'll get some sort of buzz in the meantime. And just as an example, Nevada Exploration Inc. with its South Grass Valley project, they started earlier, over a month and a half ago, with their first drill hole, and they are also drilling these 1,200 meter holes. And the last I heard, it took them 4 weeks to just get really through all the gravel and the upper part and into the rock. And they're still not yet at target depth, so it's been 6-7 weeks of drilling for the first 1,200-meter hole. Obviously, there are always going to be breakdowns along the way. This breaks, this gets stuck. And if you have a very good drill crew, then you will be able to keep the hole. The worst is when you spend all this time on a hole and it stops short of the target. And the big thing Wade Hodges is complaining about is, where are the core cutters? We need people to stand here and push the core into these diamond saws and split the core this way. You don't use a hammer and split it. You want to use a saw to cut it so you can see all the textural complexity of the rock that you're coring. RC doesn't require core cutters. It all comes up as little chips, but you don't get the structural knowledge that you get when you drill core. So anywhere where it's critical to understand the geological framework, core drilling is being done. And despite this high unemployment in the United States, nobody seems to want to stand there with their safety glasses on and feed core into a diamond saw. And maybe it's because nobody wants to pay them more than minimum wage for doing this. And maybe all the unemployment insurance and that is way better than having a job at minimum wage. But if anybody wants a job feeding core into a diamond saw, go to Nevada. They're screaming for people to do this work. The labs, this is one of their biggest bottlenecks, is cutting the core before they then break it up into smaller samples for assaying. Now, the interesting contrast between New Legacy's Rift anticline and the Nevada Exploration Inc.'s Southgrass Valley is, at Southgrass Valley, they're dealing with the Water Canyon Corridor, which is a north-south high angle, what they believe is a crustal scale fault. Others might differ and say, no, this is just the appearance of a high angle fault. It's part of that rifting and of the basin and range that formed 15 million years ago that has nothing to do with any feeder conduits. But the company thinks, no, this is a structure that was reactivated during that rifting period when the basin and range topography formed, and it was the gateway. And they see a bigger comparison with the Southgrass Valley Water Canyon Corridor with the Carlin Trend itself, which also has this big fault running through. Everything to the east of it, there's nothing there. All the mineralization is in these little structures that come off traps with the limestones and that are the key ones there that come off to the west of it. And that's a 40 million ounce high grade system. And so they ended up, whereas all the other holes were sort of subvertical holes that they drilled on a grid to the west of this fault, this program, they stepped to the east of the fault, and they're trying to drill through to understand the nature of the structure and then see how the plunging stratigraphy, where they see they have one particular Cambrian aged horizon, which they think is going to be the most prospective, their wind band 5. They want to see how this behaves as it crunches down into this fault zone where they would expect everything to be prepped and the fluid flow to have come up because everything's draped around the Grass Valley stock to the west. The Rift anticline is a clone of the Gold Rush system, which is supposed to be a fold within the stratigraphy that and that hinge ended up becoming the trap within which the fluids came up and ponded and formed this elongated 3 or 4 kilometer, 5 kilometer long gold rush body that is 10 million ounces of 10, 12 gram per ton or so. It's a different type of structure, different type of system. Both of them are very high stakes, high reward type stories. And these two plays are the most interesting ones unfolding right now in Nevada in terms of sheer size potential based on the footprints established by the hydrothermal system that previous work has identified.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.